things we've had this open the whole time. So you notice I got RoboCop. Sorry, I don't have RoboCop or C3PO for legal reasons in Tailspire. There is a reason for that. I didn't want RoboCop. I wanted Ed 209, but I couldn't find Ed 209. I could only find not RoboCop. So I want to do a short video series, basically like Robot Wars, but like I believe they actually did do a version of Celebrity Robot Wars where it was celebrities driving the robots, but that's not what I mean. I want to take famous robots and like put them against each other in a fight to the death, to see who would win. But to make that work, there would have to be some kind of like, imagine, I mean, even RoboCop would kick C3PO's ass, right? But there would have to be a way that C3PO could win if you got the dice rolls, right? And I've been trying to think like how you would do, because I'm kind of thinking that you would do the stats in a kind of top trumps type way, or just like a normal type way, like but like what would they be like? Like D&D has got like, what does D&D have? Strength, intelligence, dex, I think, all the kind of normal stuff like that. And I was just trying to think, what would the kind of base stats for like robots be? Like you definitely want to have speed, because obviously C3PO is incredibly slow, and you have to like consider that as part of the thing. And like try not to take like any of the weapons or stuff into consideration here, because I think you would add those as items and attacks that they could use. Because again, it would be like no, RoboCop isn't fast unless he's got his jetpack, right? Then he can be pretty darn fast. Or you give him an attack where he can get in his car, right? Because why the fuck not? He's got a car, he can use it. But then what I also think would be interesting if you put those kind of things as accessories. So like RoboCop comes in, he's got his gun, which is pretty good. He's obviously got his aiming. He could have his jetpack, but then C3PO could steal both his gun and his jetpack somehow. Again, I wanted to have Ed 209 because I think I don't even think you could really put RoboCop in this, because I think he's more of a cyborg than a robot, but I don't know what the rules would be. I also don't know how many famous robots there are that you could put into something like this. Obviously, if you're going through all of Star Wars, there's about 800 billion, because you have to have a robot in every Star Wars project, or else it doesn't work. But I mean, obviously you'd put R2D2 in, but that's probably, I'd probably only put in C3PO and R2D2 from the Star Wars franchise, old school. Ed 209 for sure. Johnny 5 from Short Circuit, 100%. The robot from Battlestar Galactica. Now, I believe you have the robot, and then you have the Doctor who is a disc who the robot wears. And I think you'd probably have to put them both in as a as one. You got the Cylons from Battlestar Galactica. Wally, Chappie would also work. Terminator, I think, is technically a robot. I know he wears fake skin, but I don't believe he's a cyborg. I think Terminator is just a robot. Iron Giant could work, yeah. And if you're going to go that way, you could do like Mecha Godzilla, who I think is a robot and not just Godzilla in armor. Gundams are just big robots. Well, no, Power Rangers would be difficult, right? Because there are the Power Ranger robots, but they're driven by humans, so they're more like vehicles. Gundam, are they robots or are they like big mechs? I don't know if a Gundam is like a self-contained robot or is controlled by a human. I never really got hugely into Gundam. Zords and Gundams can count because they're mechs. Yeah. This is the Transformers you could definitely do, right? They're definitely robots. Yeah. But like, if you're thinking of like, think of those kind of three. So like Ed 209, C3PO, and let's say the Transformers are actually really interesting because obviously they've got the phase changes as well. The thing from Big Hero 6, yes, that is a good one actually. I've forgotten his name, but yeah, that's a good one. But if you tried to imagine all of those robots and you were trying to have people here play Top Trumps, surely Top Trumps is not just, it must be a Baymax, yes. It must be an American thing as well. What stats do you think you need to put in for a robot? Like, I think intelligence makes sense. Like speed, I think you have to. One, if you're going to do like because I put them in I didn't make this battle arena. I downloaded it. I put them in a battle arena. So, and I'm hoping a lot of you watch Robot Wars. And maybe some of you have played arena-based battling dice games. Because that's kind of what I'm trying to go for here. Just one, because I'm trying to work out a kind of a fairly agnostic kind of battle system where you could put anyone in. So like if you wanted to do RoboCop versus Gandalf, you'd be able to do it in a way that would make sense. So health, you would have to do somehow, yes. I don't know how you would work that out. That's kind of part of the health mechanics, but yes. Sorry, part of the combat mechanics. Speed, strength, yeah, that makes sense. Armor, yeah. And then intelligence. Because then evasion would be interesting. Or like a dodge rating or something like that. I think what you would try and do, so let's take Ed 209, right? We'll ignore RoboCop. He's an Ed 209 replacement. So like if I looked at like Ed 209 he's heavy, fairly slow. I feel like stability would be interesting in robots, but then I feel like all robots on legs of RoboCop wouldn't fall over. But like C3PO looks like he would fall over at a gust of wind. Ed 209 is the big robot from RoboCop. With the double guns. Do I have an image of him over here? That's Ed 209. Oh, that's where my face is. That's Ed 209. So like if you take away, because obviously he's got two great big fuck off machine guns as weapons, but like I feel he would be fairly well armored. I like armor as a as a base stat. I think that works. Whereas C3PO is probably not very well armored. But he was built by a Sith Lord. So does that? I've put C3PO in here because I think he's the most difficult robot to think of in a fight. Right? R2-D2 is fairly scrappy. You always play the robot from RoboCop 2? Yeah, the guy who was addicted to whatever the drug was called in RoboCop. Right? Yeah, but this to me, this is what makes him interesting to try and put into this challenge, right? Because like speed, slow, just going on Rosewood's initial list, right? Speed 1, right? Ed 209 wouldn't be particularly fast, but he's got long strides, so you kind of have to consider that as part of the and also Ed 209 might be like a big one and take up 4 squares rather than just 1. Again, like, so size would be an interesting thing. Right. Well, C3PO is a protocol droid, so the interesting thing with C3PO would be, yeah, what would you give him? He is like, does he try and teach the other robots manners? I feel like his attack would have to be called bitch slap, right? Where he just does a very bad kind of like a very bad like old school kung fu chop. But yeah, I feel like you'd have to try and put like he uses protocol. Because like R2D2 is fairly different, right? Depending on which version of R2D2 you take. And again, I think you try and make that random and based on dice rolls, or maybe trying to build up energy. I think having like an energy thing. Sorry, I've got a notepad. I'm just making notes. He just insults you into your abilities until you cry. Like, I feel like C3PO, if you're playing as him, he would, because he would have such bad movement, his plan is just to try and stay behind you. Well, R2D2 is different, right? So his speed, even on his tracks, would be fairly good. That is also a possibility. 3v3 with different roles. That's not a terrible idea, honestly. But like yeah, like R2D2, he has a jetpack in some of them, so he can fly around. He's got the strong magnets, so he can walk around in space. So he could, assuming the stadium is made out of metal, you would assume he can just climb up on the walls. He's got his little circular saw blade. He's got a taser. He's got his robot penis that he can stick in other robots' holes to try and take them over. Assuming they've got a data port. Like, I feel R2D2 you can build up into quite a hero. Is it same with Ed 209, right? He's fairly big, he's fairly slow, incredibly tanky, and his guns are going to just rip through anything, right? They're strong guns. But I think you would also have to put in the you have 30 seconds to comply rule for Ed 209, right? He does, yeah. He's got rockets. I think in one iteration he also has a jetpack or ability to fly. But I might be wrong about that. See, that'd be interesting. In the 3v3 rules, it'd be interesting because you could say Ed 209 could possibly be by himself, right? But a lot bigger than your normal robot. Yeah, you've got 30 seconds to comply, so you've got like a few moves to try and get out of the way before he hits you. I think would be like interesting. C3PO to me is the hardest robot. Like Johnny 5 is also fairly easy, right? He wants to do input, so you can have the more input rule, which could mean that he learns about other robots' weaknesses, which would just give him a bonus to attack. Johnny 5 is built for war, so he'd be fairly fast, fairly well armored, fairly durable. He's got that laser thing on his back, which he can use, right? He needs R2's input. You don't have to divide the robots into groups like the typical groups of tank, DPS, and support, but you could add tactician and assassin like R2. Would be a tactician because he'd be able to do a lot, but he'd have to work in ways that mess with his team. Yeah, and I think R2 would also be fairly weak, right? which would be like R2's weakness be he'd be fast and he what does he replace his taser with? I think you'd have to keep the laser to make Johnny 5 work, I think. And I'd probably have to watch Short Circuit again to remember the jokes to put in his attacks. But again, I think he's got enough that you could do a fairly good character out of Johnny 5. He later has a toolbox with grapple and hang glide. Oh yeah, that's right. Yes. And somehow you've got to try and get a Steve Guttenberg joke in there. And then like the Cylons again, I think are fairly easy. They're fairly simple bog stat. Like I would just basically call them drones in a way. You know, they're just attack robots. Getting the Terminators in, I think, would also be good. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger is the T-1000, right? But obviously without the skin, you'd have to do it just as metal with glowing red eyes. And then I believe Hey Laser Lips, your mother was a snowblower. Yeah, you probably could. Yeah. Wally would be interesting because he can just like... Again, if you're going for... I like the 3v3 skirmish idea. Like, if you're going for the skirmish idea... you could make him a support. So again, like if you could, or like if a robot is down, he could take the trash and start to build a wall out of it. He's got self-repairing. He'd probably just be able to throw, like he could take rubbish. Like if you say in the arena, you've got like set design, like buildings, old cars, whatever, right? He could destroy the set design, turn it into a rubbish cube, and launch it at someone. Right? I like the self repair and the repairing others. Like that. That's interesting. What else could you do? I'm trying to think of other robots and just like kind of. Yeah. All right. So we're doing the kind of classic Blizzard, basically tank, DPS. Healer, and then some might be in the middle between those ideas. I think that works. Oh yeah, like you wouldn't actually make a game out of this, right? You'd have to make your own robots, but I think for like just a short video series where you just kind of try to get an idea around, I think I'd be all right. Or if you could get the rights, that'd be great. But again, it's trying to get it into a way where it wouldn't just be robots, right? So let's say you wanted to put, why not put C-3PO against the Highlander, right? So it's trying to make sure that the base stats would work for everything, and then all of like the weapons and attacks would be flavor based on what the robots were, and they would all have to try and fit into that kind of tank DPS healer area. You can have team-up mechanics like Wally and Eva have a team-up mechanic called Sunday Clothes. Don't know what it would do, but it'd be interesting. Yeah, I honestly think like team-up mechanics I think would be a lot of fun, especially if you could do them cross-platform somehow. Like how you would do a tag team move with Ed 209 and R2D2. I don't know. It'd be the C-3PO protocol, right? Could be like a stun. So basically, if you use this protocol, you lose a turn, right? Which would then help with Ed 209's, you've got 30 seconds to comply rule, because basically you're stunned for a turn, so he's probably going to hit you, right? I don't know if you would go down the weight kind of idea. But that's because I kind of like the idea. So stick with me here, right? So let's say you also, because they're robots, you do the idea that body parts can be removed without people dying, right? So you attack Ed 209 and you break one of his big guns off, right? C-3PO has also been attacked and his arm has fallen off, right? He then walks over and attaches Ed 209's great big fuck off gun to himself, right? Because why the fuck not? Yeah, so again, R2, you could do support. R2D2, if he does a roll with his data penis, could take control of anybody on the board, I would say, but he'd have to be close contact because he's got to put the rod in. Cutting his lane increases accuracy, but only for one attack, and it takes a turn to pair them. Yep. Yeah, but physics be damned, right? I think this is more about fun than physics, right? And also giving C-3PO a chance. Oh, dear. Look at the poor golden boy. He can't do shit. You could also do, like, if you're trying to keep it flavorful, you could do things like... So one of the things I quite like in skirmish games, you can consider it like an Overwatch ult mechanic, right? I believe Flick played a robo or mech game that had this kind of idea where you spend energy on the attacks and you build up energy doing various things. So you could have a very expensive move for C-3PO where he calls in Chewbacca to just stand there and fire his crossbow. Is it crossbow? It is a crossbow, right? At various things. Yeah, exactly. You could have him call in Ewoks, right? Because he is the god of the Ewoks. So you could have fun things like that as well. Which I think would work like with, if you did, let's allow cyborgs, why not? If you brought Robocop in, that could be how he brings his car in. So he can travel around the arena quite quickly. And I believe he can shoot from his car as well. But yeah, I don't know how you would do attack rolls. Because obviously you could try and do D&D style things where it's based on stats. I think you'd want to do... I think you'd probably want to do attack and defense dice, I think, for a skirmish game. But yeah, I think we start with robots. Highlander's appealing to me because again, he's quite a good character to bring in, and you know, obviously there can be only one. There's a great attack where he tries to decapitate whoever he's attacking. Good roll, he gets it. Legion was attack and defense, yes. I think. Oh, it's been so long. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's attack and defense. Attack and defense dice. Not quite as bad as the Batman game that Flick plays, the Batman board game, because that very much is attack and defense dice. But that could work here. Blackstone Fortress, I think, is... I'm trying to think how Warhammer works. Is that attack and defense? But no, I think you'd be in it. And the reason why I would start with famous things is because again it's trying to capture the character it's trying to capture the character in the attacks, right? So yeah, as long as you've got like base stats that you can put to anybody. So yeah, I think speed, strength, armor, intelligence. Is there anything else? I don't know how intelligence would be useful. I don't know how strength would be useful, really. It depends how you're doing the attacks, right? Because obviously in Dungeons and Dragons, your attacks are based off those stats. So they have a bonus. Whereas if all we're trying to say for the base stats is how hard it is to kill them, then maybe you need speed. Speed, I think, makes sense. That's a base stat, which you can either, with various moves, like, again, Robocop with his jetpack. Yeah, aim, dodge, defense. Range, I think, would be more based on the weapons that you hold, right? So obviously, if you've got a sword, your range is going to be slim. If you've got Ed 209's guns, your range is going to be fairly high. Because again, imagine a scenario, if you will, C-3PO has got hold of... Oh, no, General Grievous is a cyborg, but he would be another interesting one to bring in, kind of the robot cyborg times. But just imagine somehow C-3PO has got hold of 2 lightsabers. I think that would be important, though, because Ed 209 probably couldn't use a lightsaber, right? Because he's got no hands. So, it's an R-rated movie about that. But what you could do, so again, this is where the 3v3 I like the 3v3 skirmish idea. I think that was a really good suggestion. What you could do, so let's say Ed 209 has lost his guns. Ed can use other weapons alone. He'd need Wally to upgrade him. This is what I was thinking, right? So let's say you've shot off Ed gun. So again, I think you're going to, again, determine that body parts can be shot off, right? For multiple reasons. So one, if you're going to take out Ed 209's weapons, is to make him less deadly. You can try and take out his legs so he can't move and turn. Because again, if Ed 209 doesn't have legs, he can't turn. He's just a lump facing in the way when he went down, right? Which again, I think is interesting. But then, yeah, if you had like R2-D2 and Wally as supports / healers, they could grab his legs and put them back on, right? And then that works the same with weapons, but you would imagine only weapons that could somehow be attached to him. Like, you could give Ed 209 lightsabers, but would they just be stuck pointing straight out from his frame? And he'd basically have to charge you like a bull to do damage with them? You'd almost want to look at mech riot mechanics, like how you can destroy parts of mechs and how that affects the stats. Yeah. And of course, R2-D2 has the ability to throw lightsabers to people from a distance for people who can catch them. Oh, dear. Which would be interesting. Oh, dear. But yeah, like, because to me, the problem was I was trying to work out a way of, I put Ed 209 and C-3PO together in a cage fight. Ed 209 should win on every possible top trump metric, right? So therefore, there has to be combat mechanics about it. Unless protocol is just a metric. Is protocol just charisma? Trouble is, C-3PO is not a charismatic robot. He's a whiny jackass. But okay. So for the first attempt, let's try and narrow our focus. So for the first attempt, if we did Who's another good robot from Star Wars? If you did C-3PO, R2-D2, who would be a good... R2-D2 is going to be your DPS, I think. Kind of DPS support hybrid, like Overwatch likes these days. I don't know what C-3PO... No, C-3PO has got to be a healer, right? Somehow. Protocol is healing. Then R2-D2 would be your DPS. Let's put Grievous in as your tank. Although, again, he'd probably be more deep. No, I think tank works for Grievous. K2SO, which movie / franchise is he in? Tell me the movie and I'll get the robot. Grievous is cyborg, but I'm thinking that might work. Because what I'm trying to think of is if you did Rogue... Yeah, okay, there's a Rogue One robot. Yeah, that would work, actually. That would work really well. If you did a Star Wars team, and then if you did... Because if you're trying to do a RoboCop team, you'd want RoboCop Ed 209 and possibly the bad guy from... God, how the hell would the bad guy from RoboCop 2? He'd have to become support somehow. He does like drugs. He does have his drugs, which you could use to boost. Oh, dear. The do not struggle with rescuing you robot? Yeah, drugs like adrenaline boost. Yeah. Which you could also use like an attack against it's a good adrenaline boost for RoboCop, but if he fires it at C-3PO who's on the enemy, then it becomes like a rampage type idea where yes, C-3PO is stronger, but you don't have complete control over what he does for that turn. Because that could also work. Because I'm trying to think if you could do like a Star Wars. I can't think of enough robots in Star Trek. In fact, I can't think of a single robot in Star Trek. Would Data be considered a robot? Or, no, he's an android. I guess Data would count. But yeah, I can't really think of anyone else from... I'm sure there are robots in Star Trek. You could bring in the Daleks from Doctor Who. They'd be interesting. God, is there another franchise that's got as many robots as Star Wars? So you can just do a franchise v franchise fight as a test. Probably not. Star Wars likes their fucking robots. Transformers is probably going to be your best bet, isn't it? Not to steal directly from Overwatch, but Optimus is going to be your tank. Bumblebee is probably your damage. And then there is the one that turns into an ambulance. Fallout would be a good franchise to take from. The Healing Hollow Doctor from Star Trek can be Data support. That would be interesting as well. But yes, I would quite like to do I mean, if I looked long enough, I could probably just find a set of rules that would work for what I'm trying to do. But I'd very much like to do a like anything versus anything skirmish game, and you just be able to put in whatever you want, basically, and try and make it work. But start with robots because I figure they'd be easier. That is true with Daleks, but most people don't know that, so I think you get away with it. The Cybermen are also a little bit iffy, but I think you get away with the Cybermen as well, though. Battlestar Galactica, I can only think of the one type of Cylon. I don't... At some point, they may have started doing different Cylons. If you consider the ships as well, they definitely had different Cylons. But I think that'd be hard. K9 would be a good support from the Doctor Who universe. Yeah. 100%. Who would be a good tanky robot from Doctor Who? Like I think both Daleks and Cybermen would be DPS. Cybermen would suffer from the C-3PO problem, in my opinion. And I feel like you would end up, Daleks would just feel like a reskin of R2-D2, but you'd have to try and separate them somehow. Yeah, the concept, is there a robot? Okay, I would want to bring in the robot horse from Brave Star, but that's just a personal thing, just because he was fucking awesome. And I reckon you could probably get the rights to that one fairly cheap. Yeah, I think you're probably right on that thing, LP. Yeah, and I wouldn't want to. I don't know. Do you do a point system? Do you do a size system? I don't know. No, I think I'd rather you always have 3 robots regardless, but they're balanced. Like Ed 209 is balanced by his. There's always a turn between him starting his attack and him actually attacking. I think that gives you time to get out of the way. And then also means that you want Ed 209 to be with someone who can either freeze people in place or stun them in some way to make his attack work. As his big attack. Best viewers. No best viewers for you. Also, I think we may have run out of music. This feels like backup music. This is indeed backup music. It has to be like Crisis Protocol, like there's a point value and you have to build a team around those points. I don't know. I kind of think I'd like to go a little bit more basic than that because the point system is used a lot. And I think I would prefer if you just had to bring, like, kind of do like Overwatch lockout, right? You can have 1 tank, 1 DPS, 1 support, or whatever those kind of class things would be. And then you would have to try and balance it around the fact. So, like, so let's say Ed 209's got, let's say, I don't know, most people have 3 health, 5 armor, right? Random numbers plucked out my ass. So let's say Ed 209's big attack did 5 damage, right? Or a possible 5 damage. Because again, I think you'd want to do the attack and defense dice to make the combat a little bit less obvious. And then have ways to defend yourself. That kind of stuff. So yeah, I think you balance his big attack with the they hate you. I think you balance Ed 209 with the well, no, Robocop would be dead or alive. You come with me. So you've got 30 seconds to comply, right? And I think that kind of works. Yeah, I reckon it's always 3v3, so you always have 3 models on the table. Because it's either that or you put Ed 209 in a category of his own where he's like all 3. So you'd have to make it that, okay, he doesn't have support because he's super strong, both in armor and health and in damage. So it's going to take 3 other robots or another Ed 209 to beat him, right? Which is another way you could do it. But I think I prefer always have 3v3, I think. Not what you wanted. But yeah. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think this would have you prefer the 3v3 and he can't attack till the 3rd turn? Yeah, I think he can't do his big attack every turn, right? He could still ram into you to do damage, right? There are still things you can do every turn. Or you save up his energy. Like you could do you could make the 30 seconds to comply his like ultimate big attack. Yeah, but the weight limit, that's how they do it. So that's already being done, right? I think just being able to pick free things from different ideas. Because again, I'm trying to think. If you did a points game, no one would ever pick C-3PO, right? Oh, dear. Using weight, you could just have 2 instead of 3 since one could be beefier. Yeah, you could do that. But again, I think that's... And yeah, I mean, you could apply that to other things as well. Like if you went to, let's just do Warcraft as an example, right? You could bring a human warrior and then bring like Deathwing, who would be like a double weight kind of thing. You could definitely do that. Or do you always... I think in a 3v3 skirmish, it's better to always have 3 models, I think. Whereas the kind of the tactics in like Battletech and Mech Warrior are, do you want strong and beefy but slow hard hitters? Or do you want to take a group of small, weak, but incredibly fast death by 1,000 cuts type robots? I think C3O being elusive would make sense. 3D printed robots would be so badass. So yeah, I think I'm coming down on always have 3v3. But if someone's got a strong attack, there has to be... I like the idea of energy. So let's say, and again, that could be a base stat like energy regen, right? And you could then say what? So basically, through your turn, you can spend as much energy as you've got to do as many things as you want, right? So rather than being stuck to just 1 action, 2 action, 3 actions. Again, this is nothing new. Board games have done this before. Divinity Original Sin works on a very similar kind of system. As does one of the mech games that Flick played, and I watched quite a few videos of, works exactly along this idea of energy. But I think in that one, it was a shared energy pool, and you could spend the energy on the different characters as you wanted. Whereas I think in this one, the different characters would have their energy levels, and you could only spend the energy on them, unless as part of a support move. So you could have like R2-D2 could give energy to somebody else, so they could do a bigger attack quicker or something. Bot Wars. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yes. And then the other thing I would love to add to a game like this, which I absolutely adore, Fallout story mode. I forget what it's called. But again, Flick did very good videos with the story mode. The Skyrim board game does a fairly good campaign / story mode. Being able to do like some kind of story mode, Wasteland Warfare, yeah, some kind of story mode based around this would also be good, but that would be further down the road, right? Further down the road. We're starting with the skirmish idea. But yeah, so I think like Ed 209 would be slow, and I think his energy recharge would be fairly slow as well, which is how you limit his attacks, right? And also his movement, because he would be a fairly slow robot. C-3PO would be fairly slow, but I think would recharge fairly quickly, right? And you'd probably spend most of his money on moving. I do think you would do, so like this arena here is fairly empty, but I think you would do scenery in the arenas, so you'd have to do line of sight for certain attacks, and then for certain attacks you wouldn't need line of sight, like if someone's got like a rocket launcher where they can kind of loop it over, that would kind of work. And I think you'd want to do destroyable scenery as well, which would then put a little bit of tactics into building the arena, because you could then say, rather than the arenas being pre-built, you could say as part of you're allowed to bring like 3 pieces of cover or something, and you can put them where you want per player. And then, like I say, you could also bring like Wally. I think would be a good example of a robot who could build cover as the game is going on, using his blocks of rubbish, which should be fairly interesting. All right. All right, so energy plus then how that would build up. And yeah, I think you would say you don't have to spend all of your energy. I think you probably say you had to spend a minimum of 1 per turn. And then I think in basic terms, you would have 3 different options, right? You're either going to spend your energy attacking, spend your energy moving, or spend your energy defending in some way. Whatever that defense would be. You're either like building up evasion. If there's a robot that can do stealth, then they can go stealth and move around. Which would be interesting, because I'm now thinking somebody stealth, but then you've got the Predator on the board, so he can then spend an energy cube to work out where they are. I don't know how you would do stealth on a board game. They remove the model but have to remember where it is. I don't know. Oh dear. Which I think would be interesting. I don't know, if I tried to work this out over a couple of streams, chat, would you find that interesting? Is it something you would want to watch? And then try and do like a couple of videos where we kind of got rules in place and like do a couple of matches. And